Most people hear the word debt and immediately feel a little anxious. Debt sounds like something to avoid, something heavy, something that can ruin your life. But here's the truth. Debt isn't bad. It's just a tool. And like any tool, it can build something great or destroy what you've built, depending on how you use it. Let's unpack that idea, because understanding it could completely change how you see money. Imagine two people, Alex and Jordan. Alex avoids all debt. No credit cards, no loans, no mortgage. Pays cash for everything. Jordan uses debt strategically, takes out a mortgage to buy a rental property, uses a business credit line to fund a small e-commerce store, and pays off balances every month. 10 years later, Alex has no debt, true, but also no assets that generate cash flow. Jordan has debt, but also owns appreciating assets and earns income that covers those loan payments many times over. Who's really better off? The answer depends on how the debt is used. Let's start with what debt really is. Debt is borrowed money, but more precisely, it's borrowed time. When you take a loan, you're pulling forward future income to use it now. It's like time traveling your money. That can be powerful. It lets you invest in things that grow, education, property, a business, without waiting years to save the full amount. But it can also be dangerous if the money you borrow doesn't create value, or worse, if it loses value fast. That's why the key question isn't, is debt good or bad? It's, what am I using it for? Economists describe two broad types of debt: productive debt and consumptive debt. Productive debt builds wealth. Consumptive debt drains it. A student loan that helps you qualify for a $90,000 a year job can be productive, if managed properly. A car loan for a luxury SUV that loses 20% of its value in the first year, that's consumptive. It looks good on Instagram, but it doesn't pay you back. Let's look at some numbers. In the U.S., total household debt passed $17.7 trillion in early 2024, according to the New York Federal Reserve. That includes mortgages, auto loans, student loans, and credit cards. Credit card balances alone hit $1.12 trillion, a record high. But here's the striking part. The average credit card interest rate recently climbed above 20%. So for every $1,000 on a card, you could be paying $200 a year in interest for something you probably bought months ago. That's not leverage, that's a slow leak in your financial boat. Now compare that to debt used for investment. Let's say you buy a rental property worth $300,000. You put down 20%, so you borrow $240,000 at 6% interest. Your monthly payment is around $1,440. You rent it out for $2,000. After expenses, you're netting a few $100s a month while someone else, your tenant, is paying down your loan. In 10 years, you've built equity, maybe $100,000 or more, and the property likely appreciated. That's debt working for you. The problem is that most people never make that jump. They use debt for consumption, not production. They borrow to buy things that lose value: cars, clothes, gadgets, vacations, because it feels good in the moment. It's easy to justify. I'll pay it later. But later rarely comes. According to Experian, the average American carries about $6,000 in credit card debt and pays over $1,000 a year in interest. That's money that could have gone into investments, an emergency fund, or simply buying time for yourself. So why do we use debt wrong? Partly psychology. We crave instant gratification. Our brains release dopamine when we buy something new. Debt lets us have that feeling now without waiting to earn or save. But there's another reason. We're not taught how to use debt strategically. Most schools still don't teach personal finance basics. Many parents avoid talking about money altogether. So people learn by trial and error, usually the hard way. Let's shift perspective. Businesses use debt all the time, and nobody calls them irresponsible for it. Apple, for example, had over $100 billion in debt in 2023, even though it was sitting on more than $160 billion in cash and investments. Why would a trillion-dollar company borrow money? Because debt, when cheap, can amplify growth. Apple issues bonds at very low interest rates, then uses that capital for innovation, stock buybacks, or expansion. It's leverage, not desperation. You and I can use the same principle, just on a smaller scale. Let's talk about leverage for a second. Leverage is using borrowed money to increase your potential return. It's like using a lever to lift something heavy. If your investment earns a higher percentage than the cost of borrowing, the difference is profit generated by leverage. But if your investment loses value, leverage magnifies the loss. That's why understanding risk is crucial. A 6% mortgage might make sense if your property appreciates at 8% and generates cash flow. But if the market drops 10% and you're over-leveraged, you could be in trouble. One of the best examples of good leverage is how many small business owners get started. They take out a small business loan or use a line of credit to buy equipment or inventory. If that loan helps them generate $10,000 a month in revenue and the repayment cost is $2,000, that's smart debt. But if the loan goes towards fancy office furniture or a new car for the owner, that's just consumption disguised as business expense. Same dollar figure, completely different outcome. There's also the concept of opportunity cost. If you pay cash for everything, you might feel safe, but you also tie up capital that could be working elsewhere. Suppose you have $100,000. You could buy a property outright, no mortgage. Or you could use $100,000 as a 20% down payment on a $500,000 property. If that property appreciates just 4% in a year, you've gained $20,000 in value, a 20% return on your original cash. That's the power of leverage. Used wisely, it multiplies what you can achieve. But let's not romanticize debt. It still requires discipline, cash flow management, and a plan. Because when things go wrong, and they sometimes do, you need a safety net. The 2008 financial crisis was a brutal reminder. Millions of people borrowed too much, often with adjustable rate mortgages they didn't fully understand. When interest rates reset, payments skyrocketed. Home values dropped. Debt that once seemed manageable became a trap. The lesson wasn't that all debt is evil, it was that unexamined debt is dangerous. So how can you use debt the right way? Start by asking 3 questions before borrowing. First, will this debt create future income or value? If yes, that's a green light. Second, can I comfortably handle payments even in a downturn? If the answer's no, you're stretching too far. Third, what's the total cost? Not just the interest rate. Fees, insurance, opportunity cost, all matter. If you can tick those boxes, then debt becomes a partner, not a predator. Let's take a real-world example. Suppose you're considering grad school. Tuition is $40,000. You'll need loans for half of it. If that degree boosts your income from $60,000 to $90,000, that's a $30,000 annual gain. Even after taxes and loan payments, you come ahead. But if the program doesn't significantly raise your earning potential, you might spend years paying for something that doesn't pay you back. Education can be a great investment when you measure the return. Or think about buying a car. You can finance a new one with a 5-year loan at 8% or buy a reliable used car in cash. The new car loses about 15% of its value the moment you drive off. The used one holds value better and frees up your monthly cash flow. That difference, invested in an index fund earning 7% annually, could grow to thousands over time. Debt isn't the villain, it's how we prioritize short-term comfort over long-term growth. Here's something most people don't realize. Even governments and central banks rely on debt. The U.S. national debt passed $34 trillion in 2024. That sounds terrifying, but part of that debt funds infrastructure, research, and innovation, things that grow the economy over time. The problem arises when debt funds consumption without generating enough future productivity to cover it. The same principle applies to households. If you borrow to create more capacity, to learn, to earn, to build, you're mirroring how healthy economies expand. If you borrow just to maintain appearances, you're setting yourself up for stagnation. There's also a personal psychology shift that happens when you use debt strategically. Instead of feeling burdened, you start feeling empowered. You realize you're in control of timing and resources. Think of it like driving a car with manual gears. Debt gives you an extra level of control, but only if you understand how to shift smoothly. If you don't, you stall the engine. Let's look at how interest rates affect all of this. When rates are low, borrowing can accelerate growth. Between 2020 and 2021, mortgage rates in the US dropped below 3%. Many people refinanced, cutting monthly costs by hundreds. Those who used the savings to invest or build assets came out ahead. But when rates rose sharply in 2023 and 2024, mortgages near 7%, credit cards above 20%, that changed the math. The cost of borrowing increased, so leverage worked less efficiently. That's why timing and flexibility matter. Use low-rate environments to build wisely and high-rate periods to consolidate, pay down, or hold cash. There's another layer, emotional debt. Not the financial kind, but the stress that comes with owing money. Studies from the American Psychological Association show that 65% of adults cite money as a major source of stress. Debt can weigh on relationships, sleep, mental health. That's why even good debt should be managed with clear boundaries. Set automatic payments, keep emergency savings, and don't let leverage become addiction. Freedom is the goal, not endless expansion. So what's the practical takeaway? Debt is neutral. It's like fire. Handled correctly, it heats your home. Handled carelessly, it burns it down. The difference lies in education, mindset, and discipline. Think about how you can reframe debt in your own life. Maybe it's restructuring high-interest credit cards into one lower-rate loan. Maybe it's using a mortgage to buy an income-producing asset instead of a liability. Or maybe it's investing in yourself, a course, a certification, a skill that raises your earning potential long after the loan is gone. Debt, used intentionally, can become the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. One last thought. In personal finance, people often quote the idea of good debt and bad debt. But in reality, it's all about return on debt. If the return, financial, educational, or emotional, is greater than the cost, it's good. If not, it's bad. Simple, but powerful. So the next time you hear someone brag about being completely debt-free, remember, that's one kind of success, but another kind is being debt-smart, using leverage to grow while staying in control. Both paths can lead to financial freedom. It depends on your goals, your risk tolerance, and your discipline. If this perspective helped you see debt in a different light, don't forget to subscribe to Taz's Money for more insights like this. Because understanding how money really works isn't just about numbers, it's about choices. And the more you understand those choices, the more freedom you create for yourself and your future. Debt isn't bad, it's just misunderstood. Used wisely, it can open doors to opportunity, growth, and independence. Used carelessly, it can close those same doors fast. So treat it with respect, with awareness, and with strategy. Because in the end, the goal isn't to avoid debt completely. The goal is to master it, so it serves you, not the other way around.